welcome Daribha to the session. Daribha, we're extremely excited to have the book on the shortlist, and congratulations once again. I'm
Thank
going
you
to
so
go
much.
straight into the questions. Oh well, going straight into this name, place, animal, thing. The title of the book itself has evoked memories, I think, in almost everyone. Each one of us has grown up playing that game. So I'm going to shoot this out to you and make you play this like in a very bookish version. Um, so I'm going to give you a clue, and you have to give me name, place, animal, thing
All
for
right.
that particular book. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, I'll try. It's been so long. I think that 20 years since I played it, but I'll try.
Yeah, but it's always good to have that part of our childhood alive in us,
Yeah.
especially since your book deals with childhood in a
Yeah.
very eternal manner. It's always been. It's always going to be a part of our lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with Harry Potter.
Okay. And the letter
H.
H. So you want a name, place, and animal thing with H, and they should all be in the Harry Potter world.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have H. Oh my goodness. H is Hermione for name, and then place. Uh, oh my goodness, place. I don't know. Place. Hippogriff animal. Uh, thing mm, would be I don't know. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, one second. See, I have name and place, and then oh my god, it's been so long since I read Harry Potter. Oh my gosh. Place. Okay, name, place. Places. Oh my god, all the Harry Potter people are going to be up my, neck,
then how could
seating.
you forget?
How could you
Okay, do you want
forget?
to start? Do you want to start with your own book? Name, place, animal, thing. Your own book. And I won't give you an alphabet. Just give me a name, a place, an animal, and a thing.
Okay, a name would be from the book itself.
Yeah.
A name would be Yuva. A place would be Lankra. Animal would be oh my god, one second, my cat. Literally, I said animal and my cat jumped on my table. An animal would be the yellow bear, and a thing would be the toy my cousin I took for my cousin, the coloring pencil. A coloring pencil.
Right. Um, the book grows on you very quietly, and it's deceptively very uncomplicated. How complex was the idea in your head when you decided to start writing with a child's voice?
So since since I have drawn quite heavily on memory, and I wanted the child's voice to be the most pronounced, I made sure to have it sound as uncomplicated as it could be. But the thing is that children, they are very intuitive. They know when something's wrong. They don't have to understand it, but they have a sense of things. They understand when something's not right, when someone is hurt, someone is scared, because they also feel those emotions. And maybe sometimes they're flippant with things, and they don't have such a uh, such a uh, complete understanding of a particular situation, but they understand that at the core of it something is wrong in a particular situation. And when writing all the stories, although they don't you know There is no omniscient narrator who's coming in between paragraphs telling us how Dee is feeling and how, such a situation is, how it's shaped her and so on and so forth. It's not talking for Dee, Dee's talking for herself. So we see her understanding of things as it unrolls itself through her living her life as a child. It's uncomplicated in that sense, perhaps, but she adults tend to treat children through gloved hands. They don't really want children to know everything, and that's completely understandable. Children shouldn't grow up too fast, but they inadvertently do, because sometimes they just have things happen to them or in front of them and for them, and they grow up faster than they should. So in that sense, I did want the child's voice to be the most. I wanted the child's voice to come out. I made a conscious choice to do that. And when I was writing, I never had any doubt that that would be the most important thing in the book, the child's voice.
Right. And the child, she watches the world around her. She's extremely sensitive and she's extremely conscious, not only of the people that she's talking about, because she's observing them and narrating their stories and whatever is happening as the stories roll out, but she's also very conscious of the socio-cultural environment in all her innocence. As somewhere behind all of this, this is my personal reaction to the book. I felt there was this deep pathos running through the book. That even if there was that childlike innocence, um, and she delved as deep as her age would allow her to into a particular situation, which is fantastic, by the way, because you as a writer have written it in that manner. But am I reading too much into it, or is there this underlying sadness constantly
No, you've
knowing
tapped,
somewhere?
no, you've tapped on a thing I've done quite consciously. I have written with that in mind, that the pathos you were talking about. You've absolutely tapped into that, right? I have written that very consciously. Uh, Children, again, they unwittingly, they are put in situations where they are meant, like they are made to encounter situations which are ahead, you know, which they cannot seem to completely grasp at a particular situation. Like you said, the age will allow. And the pathos, some things, this pathos and this pathos. So some things are funny and some things are not. And that's, I think, how we as adults deal with things. And with children, it is the same. It's just that they take longer to get there because they don't have the tools to understand things. We have experience, they do not.
That's yeah. I think, and you've handled that most naturally because as a reader, we read on effortlessly.
Yeah.
We just go with the flow of the story. You've also chosen to write about everyday life. You've chosen to write about family activities or a regular day in school or what happens in class with the Hindi examination or uh, even when the family is going to pray in memory of the grandfather. These are very, they're not momentous in that sense to be part of a full-fledged novel, and yet you strung these stories along. Um, Obviously, you wanted to write in the Bildungsroman style, but what kept you going? Like, because they're very well knitted together.
It's, most of the time when you read books, or you read, even if you're when I'm studying literature, you have that moment in, the Greek hero or someone have this event happen to him, this one event that shapes his entire future, how that one event will change him as an individual. That you have that a lot in epic epic stories and stuff like that. And that may be true of some stories. I don't believe that is true of all stories, because a lot of us, without knowing it, are we are molded by the small events that take place in our lives. We don't need that one event to happen for us to change, become a hero or become a villain, or that one. I don't believe people change or evolve due to one thing alone. You have small quiet moments in your life that you think about in solitude, or you think about maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe not immediately afterward, and you think, oh, okay, that meant something to me. I felt bad about it at that point of time, or I felt sad about it. I wonder why. You only think about it later, but sometimes you think about it immediately, but it's always those small quiet moments. It's an amalgamation of small events rather than one large event that can shape you. That is, I believe, some way where protagonists evolve. No offense to the Greeks.
No, not at all. I think it's a beautiful book. So, coming back to that, it is a book which is driven by the characters. It's not a plot-driven book at all. And to
Yes.
to keep the story going, I think is even more tough for the writer when it is character-driven. You've managed to weave in people from different cultural backgrounds in the backdrop of Shillong as a city. Uh, while all the time you've also kept that thread that all these people who become a part of the protagonist's life, and how they impact them, how they impact her life as the thread that keeps the book going from one story to another. Um, did you consciously choose the characters yourself, or did they just, in the sense, did they choose you, or they just came to you, or they're part of some semi autobiographical look at your own life? What made you do the kind of choices for the characters?
Uh, I think it's a bit of all three that you said. I think some of them is what I remember. Some people are inspired by certain people I've met in my life. Of course, they're highly fictionalized. I've added a whole lot of things to that particular character. But there are some people who I was inspired by. I feel that everybody knows a version of the characters in their own way. I think growing up, we all met our own kind of Bahadur. We all met our own kind of way. We all had experiences that were similar in that sense. We all met these kind of people, and perhaps we met them not in the same order, or maybe the impact they had on our life is slightly different. But we all know these characters, so in that sense, I think it is inspired by what has happened with people I know, people I have also I believe to exist for everybody, not just for D, but for everybody living in a small town.
Right. So when you're there's also a passage of time. Like literally, time also plays a very important role in the entire book, because we get introduced to Dee when she's about roughly 8 years old. But by the time we finish the book, she's close to being about 20 years, 18 to 20 years of age.
Right.
What you've done beautifully is that time just grows with us as we grow with the protagonist in the book. It plays a very quiet role. And we suddenly don't realize what you said in the beginning of the session, that you don't realize when. the child grows up. And that's exactly the feeling I got towards the end of the book. Oh my God, when did she grow up? So, again, was this a conscious technique that you employed, or you just went with the flow?
I think again, I think I went with the flow, because when you're at that age, when you're growing up, you don't really worry about time. You don't worry about how much time you have left. You think you have all the time in the world. Right now, at our age, we worry about how much time you have, how much will we be able to do all the things we want to do within that particular time period, or oh, I have this meeting to go to, and I have this place to be, I have to finish these things. But children don't worry about that. They only worry about, you know they don't they don't they don't sit on the worry about how much time they have. They worry about things like, oh, I'm going to turn 16, or I'm going to become a teenager, or things like that. It's very nebulous time for children. We think about it more than we do, because we think we don't have enough of it. They think they have time. They have lots of time. So that's why there's no border for time. Everything meshes into itself for children, I believe.
Right. Tell me something. Did you have a Hindi teacher like Miss Trivedi in your life?
I did. I did. I did. She was really nice lady. She's a nice lady. I don't really know where she is, but yeah, she's somewhat similar to Mrs. Trivedi. She's a nice lady. She's a good teacher. Very supportive of a Khasi person learning Hindi.
Right. Right. Now, coming to the fact that you hint at the class differences through the stories of the characters that you have written, how somebody who's not a Khasi person um, versus somebody from the Khasi tribe itself. And there is that slight tug, there is that slight sense of um, ownership, of conflict. And you've still managed to observe it as a child would observe it. Was it a conscious effort on your part to just deal with it just the way the child would and not delve into it in more depth?
I was very worried about not making the book heavy-handed. I didn't want it to be didactic at all. I didn't want to be, writing platitudes, because a child would not think in those terms. A child would think, oh, something's happening here, something different, something's wrong. This person looks different from me, and I made it a conscious effort to not have a child talk about these things as an adult. But children know things, children notice. Like I said, children are intuitive, they notice differences, they notice when, they hear people talk. Children love to sit when adults are around. They love to hear them talk. They love to hear what's the gossip, what's happening. So again, it was a conscious effort to have the child relay the experiences of differences among class and race as she sees it, not as this child having this whole, moment of, oh, this is bad and this is bad because, and then 2 3 paragraphs of her explaining why. I didn't want that at all. I was very worried about making sure it would not be heavy handed.
Yeah, it shows, it shows. And yet there are some very beautiful turn of phrases. There's almost there are lots of sentences which I actually reread because I just found them rather poetic. Like the prose was literally uh, lyrical not at all times, but at some times, and especially when you draw the analogy when she stuffs those white butterflies in a glass jar, and how literally step by step she describes how they crumbled, and then she tipped the jar over and they fell out in a heap. And that is the time, I think it was a great moment of show not tell from a writer's point of view.
Yeah.
um, was there something similar, because it was just so real, the description was so real, as if it was coming straight from inside of yourself. um, was it something like that, or
Yes,
it was
uh,
just
yes. While I was writing the book, and I was writing the last chapter, which was very dear to me because I was writing about a person a friend I actually had who experienced all those things. I was very, uh, I was very conscious about making this chapter mean a lot to me. So I, again, I try to think about death, but how does a child cope with death? Again, I don't want it to be heavy-handed. I can't have a child, quote some philosopher on, the inevitableness of death. So I could only talk about how a child encounters her first, experience with it. That's always with these smaller things, with a thing you unconsciously do without realizing it, like killing a butterfly, or you know, running over a cat with your cycle or something like this. Is for most children, this would be their first encounter with that, a small thing. And I used to do this. I did it once actually. I did play with butterflies once and put them in a jar, and I never did that anymore after I saw that, they
what
died.
happened? Yeah.
I didn't like that at all, so I stopped that. And somehow I remember I was able to draw upon that memory and write this. And I thought this was the best way a child could understand that in her
Right,
terms.
because at the end of it, it all ties up to Yuba's illness and what happens to her. And the time difference is even more palpable at that point in the narrative for us as readers, because it immediately takes us back to that particular scene with the butterflies, and how you make her deal with Yuva's illness, and how candid she is about it. So that even if she's a grown up girl at this point in time, there is a certain childlike innocence of handling of that loss. And then one understands that loss and friendship is such a it's like an undertone throughout the book. So how did you manage to weave Yuba's story in such a heart? It was just like so beautifully done.
I think as children, you don't really know, you don't think death is a thing that's coming. You throughout the novel, throughout the chapter, that particular chapter, she assumes that it's just a sickness that she will come back from. She doesn't understand the true, the true weight of the situation, that someone could die. She's she has a hard time grappling because she doesn't believe it will happen, because it never even enters her mind. The child, it doesn't even enter her mind that this could happen. You see someone get sick and you think, okay, they'll take their medicine and they'll get back up and running in a week, maybe a month, maybe. But it's that nothing bad's going to happen. So as she's seeing her friend, you know deteriorate in front of her, she never stops to think, hey, this she may never come back from this. I may lose a friend. So she's dealing with it as, again, someone who's really doesn't understand much about sickness and death, and you know how uh, she needs to come to terms with some things she can't control. I think children think they can control certain things just like adults, uh, within the sphere their parents allow them. And I did put Yuva throughout all the chapters. All the chapters have time. You see her grow up in all the chapters. And in the last chapter, I again start from when she was young, when she first met Yuva, and then growing up. So the last chapter is almost a recap of her growing up,
Of course.
but with
Yeah.
Yuva being in it.
Yeah.
So, so that's how the last chapter I think is largely different from the first
Mm.
9 chapters. It's a recap with Yuva as the main character.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think two of the other characters that really struck out, like you said, that all of us have encountered some of these people in our lives while we were growing up. So uh, the way you narrated Bahadur's story and the way you wrote about B, um, they kind of stood out as people who did leave a mark on the child. Um, Again, was this deliberate? Again, was this just a natural way? Because you are a natural storyteller. One can just see you going from one story to another so effortlessly. But B and Bahadur seemed special.
I think to a certain degree, everyone is special in different ways, but perhaps B and Bahadur came at a time when they taught her something at that particular time. Uh, Bahadur was her first encounter with, you know, understanding race difference and knowing that not all people are there to help you. People are selfish. People can be selfish. People, uh, they're not the friendly neighbors they claim to be. You may see them in church, all singing praises about love thy neighbor, and then they come and they don't love their neighbors. They don't come out, and that is a big lesson to learn as a grown up, because even now at my age, in my 30s, I still want to believe in the goodness of people. I want to believe that if I'm on the street and I'm bleeding out, someone will come and help me. And to learn that at 8 years old, that not everybody is going to come and help you, even if you're bleeding out on the road, that's a big lesson to learn. And you forget that this is the truth. You forget that throughout life when something bad happens to you, like, of course that person will come and help me, that's the right thing to do. But not everyone does the right thing, and she learns that hard way. And that's a hard lesson to learn for a child. With
Yeah.
B is the kind of person who is always there, is always around, is always there, that you take them for granted that they'll always be there, and that when they're not there anymore, you will realize that, oh my goodness, I didn't give her due credit when she was here. We all have
Hmm.
that kind of person in our life, and I feel that it's important that we, you know, acknowledge how important they are when they're around, rather than wait for them to leave and then feel that gap that they, leave behind with their absence. Especially since B was a person who she grew up with, like a friend.
Hmm.
She was her friend. That, I think that's important. I think the class difference thing is there because B is taught by her grandmother that she's not a friend, she's help. She's help. She can't be your friend, but she never saw it that way. She saw B as her friend.
That's right. And I think that's what the book speaks about, that there can be different kinds of friends. They come and they go, but they impact you in some way or the other, and you carry them inside yourself always, whether they are from a different race or from a different class. But the child always carries her friends within her mind, which is exactly what made the book really this precious little gem for us.